Hey y'all, welcome back to Rocker Clay. So this is Taylor and Stephen Cramm. They're my sweet friends and they have their own podcast. They're such a light for the Lord. And so we're just going to come on and ask a couple of questions about engagement and marriage. So, okay, I always ask 3 questions on my podcast. So the question that y'all picked out was, what characteristic of God has he been teaching you personally in this season?
Definitely, I think, well, it could be 2 things. It could be his faithfulness, but also his provision, because we're very much like we've just had a baby. He's going to be 2 months old on Monday. And it's like a daily bread situation
Yeah.
that we're in. He is a needier baby. We don't know necessarily if he has colic, like legit, but he just is fussy a lot, and he's sleeping okay. But it's definitely a, hey Lord, I need you to just like give me one more day, and he's doing that. So that's great.
I love that. I love that. That's like, I mean, I feel like that's life in general. And then even more so when you add a baby on, it's like, Lord, I need you day in and day out.
Very
And
true.
that's so good.
Very true.
That's so amazing. Stephen, what about you?
Yeah, I think similar. I've been meditating a lot on the idea of like, do not be anxious about anything, and not needing to be anxious because God is a good God and a provider and a father, and all the things that I think I have to do to provide for the family. Like God is my father and providing for me and for the
That's so
family.
good.
And so just not being anxious and kind of resting in that knowledge, which is easy to say on a podcast, a lot harder to do when you leave the prayer closet and you're like, okay, let's live this life, not being anxious. You know, it's it's a day-to-day practice.
Exactly. Oh, I love that. It truly is. It's literally just surrendering everything to the Lord. Oh, I love that. Y'all, I go to their house and I literally just let them just teach me all these wonderful things. Like there was one day we sat out by the fire for like hours just talking about life. And I was like, what do you believe about the Lord? And it's just so good. So if anyone is not friends with them, you need to become friends with them. They're the best people ever.
I know fall's coming. We'll whip out the fire pit soon.
There you I can't wait. I can't wait. So, if you want to tell a little bit about yourself. So, first, Stephen, you have a podcast. So, can you tell us like kind of when that started, what kind of prompted that, and what's that called, and where they can find you and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called My Apologies, and the word apology is from Greek roots, meaning basically to make a defense or to provide a reason for something that you believe. And so it's where you get the word apologetics from. It's not like a crusty apologetics channel. We're going through Mere Christianity right now and just talking about what C.S. Lewis has to say about the life of faith and the life of virtue, which is something I think is the good life. I think the good life is living according to faith and having virtue personally. And so just kind of like teaching people what the old apologists have to say and how we can get back to that life, the good life. It was really encouraged by Taylor. She's my biggest fan, and it's been something I've been mulling over for a long time. She's like, "You got to do it," and so I just eventually did it. Went for it.
I love that.
A year in the making?
At least, yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, that's amazing that you stepped out in faith. And I think so many people need to hear that of like the good life is literally only found in Christ, and that you just say that of like you say the raw truth. And I love how you started your podcast of saying like, if you're offended, my apologies. But like, you know that people actually need to hear that because the media and the world is just telling them all of these lies. And so that's so good that you have something that's like feeding people truth actively. So thank you for your faithfulness in doing that. That's amazing. And Taylor, thank you for being his cheerleader and coming on. She's on a couple of podcasts. Said marriage. That's it. And that's exactly what we're talking about. So I love that. I love that. Okay, so then where do y'all go to church? And then you said how old your baby is. So let's do word for the year and favorite color.
Okay. Well, we go to Northway Church that's in Dallas. It's one of the branches off of the Village Church that Matt Chandler started up. So yeah, it's in Dallas. Shay Solomon is the pastor, and he was actually my pastor back in California when I was going to church in California. So it's just this whole wild story, but we love going there.
2+ years?
2+ years.
Yeah. April 22?
21.
21. Math.
That's awesome.
April 21.
You said math. I love that. It's such a good church. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I love that. Okay, and then your favorite color, Taylor?
Taupe.
Taupe. Okay. Love that. That's a different one. I don't think I've heard that one.
It's like not quite beige, you know, it's got
Oh,
like a
yeah.
little bit of color to it, but it's still a neutral. I'm a neutral girl. People can
Oh,
make fun of
yeah.
it, but
If you walk through our house, you'd
Hey.
be able to
yes.
tell.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, your
Two-tone.
house is so cute, though. I love it. And
Thank you.
tan is, and like tan, taupe, and the neutrals, that's all in. So
Yeah.
you're good. You're good.
Uh-huh.
Steven, what is your favorite color?
Super basic. I'm a basic guy. Blue. Big fan of
Blue.
blue.
Hey, it's a good color. It's a
It is.
good color.
Color sky. Good color.
Color of the sky. I love
Is it
that.
primary
Hey,
color? It is a primary color.
I don't know. I didn't do art.
Red,
So.
yellow,
yeah.
right?
Yes. It is.
But it's
Yeah.
different with light than it is with paint.
I don't know.
That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Sidetrack.
You said, I don't know. Okay, and then do y'all have a word for the year?
So, do you want to go first?
No, go for it.
My word for the year is related to our son, actually.
I was gonna say that.
Were you gonna say that?
Uh-huh.
Marriage again. So it's basically before I found out we were having a son, I felt like the Lord gave me the word of having a son, and that he'd be a source of joy. And so that's kind of been a word that I've been holding on to throughout the winter. So I don't know if it's the year 2023, but for the past like 10, 12 months,
Yeah.
I've been holding on to this like source of joy in the midst of a lot of like turmoil in our personal lives. So I would say that for sure.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so good. Oh my gosh. And that he's literally just like such a ray of light. And oh my goodness. I see all of y'all's pictures on Instagram and I'm like, they're so precious. And I'm
I know
like,
he's smiling now, which is so fun.
Oh,
I
so
love
nice.
and like his laugh and oh gosh, I can't believe like his giggle. Oh, love
So cute.
so much. So he is such a sweet source of joy, and that he like radiates the Lord and like childlike faith even from such a young age. Like how sweet. I love that. Okay, and then here's the fun question. What was y'all's first date?
Do you remember?
Yeah.
You
So
said,
our
"Do you
first date, of course, it's kind of a blurred line because we were hanging out a lot at the beginning.
Yeah.
But our first official date was on September 11th, which I think is hilarious. It's a very memorable day. I'm never gonna forget that date. But I was visiting my parents in Houston. I lived in Salt Lake City at the time, so I was visiting my parents in Houston, and drove up to Dallas to take her on a date. And we went and got sushi.
Yeah, he told me earlier on that he had only ever had store sushi. And so I was like, okay,
Sushi.
if you like enjoy that, or at least if you're not repulsed by it, I think you'll enjoy real sushi. And so we went to sushi on our first date.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's so sweet.
And then we
That's
went to
so
a
cute.
speakeasy afterwards.
Yeah, then we went to Deep Ellum, which is a random part of Dallas if you live in the area.
Yeah.
And I went to a speakeasy. It was like a candy shop when you walked in, and then there was some kind of password that we had to figure out from Facebook, and then
That
into a
is
really cool bar.
Yeah.
That is so fun. What a fun first date. Oh my gosh. Okay, all guys out there, take notes. Take notes. This is what you do.
I actually didn't plan it because I wasn't from Dallas. And so I told her, like, hey, I get it. I'm the guy. Like, I want to take initiative and plan a date.
Yeah, he did say that.
But if you have, like, a great idea of something you want to do, like, I'm humble enough to say I don't know Dallas, so you can come up with things you'd like to do. I've planned pretty much everything since, but just recognizing I don't know the city. And I could Google stuff, but that's what you're going to get is my best guess. So she actually she gets the credit for the idea.
Hey, there you go. And sometimes that's key. Guys, listen up. You say, hey, like I would love to plan it, but I want to do what you want to do. So like, is there something you enjoy that we could do? That's a good way.
This is a sidebar too, but I think it's really cool. We've done this a couple of times too, but we'll give like 2 options. So we'll say, here's option number 1 if you're feeling something like, I don't know,
like outgoing and fun.
Or here's option number 2 if we just want to be chill. So I love being presented options and then getting to pick something. So it's like he's taking the initiative and doing things, but also I get a little bit of say.
There you go. Hey, that's the best way to do it. Say, here are your options. We're going to let you choose. And then you get to choose the one that's more like just interesting to you. I love that. That's very good. I'm going to keep that in mind. Be like, okay, guys, let's see going on.
Nothing else from this podcast.
There's a tip.
There you go.
There's your tip. I love that. I love that. Okay, so now we're going to move into like the engagement questions and kind of how that was in for y'all's stories. So can y'all tell a little bit of your story of like how you got engaged? Like what was the process and what were like, I think from both of y'all, what were some key things that y'all were like, this is like this is my person, you know?
Mm-hmm. So I guess I can start and like tell our story very briefly.
Yeah.
So I'm living in, well, Flower Mound, but the DFW area. At the time, he's living in Salt Lake City. He graduated from Baylor, and then went to go move out to Salt Lake to help plant a church out there, and
Wow.
do like ministry, Mormon. Can you say it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone. But
Yeah. Um. So my brother, he plays into the story. He was playing football for BYU,
Okay.
and then ended up in Salt Lake. BYU is in Provo. It's like an hour from Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Anyway, after he graduated, moved to Salt Lake and ended up at the same church as Stephen. And so Trevor, my brother, called me one day and he was like, "Hey, I know you try and like pimp me out to your friends all the time. I never do that for you." He goes, "But there's this guy that I met, and he seems pretty cool. Like based on the things that I heard him talking about and the things that we were talking about, I think you guys would actually get along and agree on a lot of stuff."
and I didn't know that this was that conversation was happening. I had no clue.
So on your end, you were just hanging out.
I was just hanging out with Trevor, and then he invited me to come play spike ball one day in like May, and this was like early COVID, and so he invited me to go play spike ball in some park, and he said my sister's going to be there, and I was like, okay,
Yeah,
cool.
so I'm visiting at this point, and then Trevor reached out to some friends just to set up some time to play.
Yeah, so that was the first time we met playing spike ball in a park in the middle of Salt Lake City, which was a blast. But then I don't really use Instagram. I don't use social media. That's one of the biggest stretches for me with podcasting is getting back into social media.
Yeah.
And so I didn't add her on Instagram or anything. I thought she was cute, but I didn't want to.
I was potentially thinking about moving there. So I was thinking about moving to Dallas proper or going to Colorado. There was a church that was starting out there, and so I might have wanted to go help with that, or go to Salt Lake to go live with my brother and hang out in the mountains for a while because we don't have those in Texas.
No, we do
So
not.
those are my options.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Yeah, I know.
so he was basically saying, "Hey, if she ends up moving to Salt Lake, I think I'll ask her out."
Yeah.
Huh.
And so, I'm not going to worry about it unless she moves out. Joke's on me. Because then a few months later, she's actually going to visit Denver to check it out, see if she wants to move there. And she tells Trevor, "Hey, it's just like an 8-hour drive through the mountains, not a big deal. Why don't you come visit me, bring some friends?" And so I get invited to drive across the Rocky Mountains, I guess around them through Montana, and go visit them while they're in Denver. And so we're there. Tia and I got a lot of quality time because Trevor had a terrible job that he didn't give him any leave, like no PTO, and so he had to work all the mornings. And so in the morning he's working on a computer, and Taylor and I are just like hanging out, which was a dangerous combination because we very quickly started to click. And so eventually I just got to the point where I was like, we're hanging out a lot. I need to.
This is like day 3 of our trip.
Yeah. Like I need to DTR and let her know I'm not just like playing around. This isn't how I normally am. I'm actually interested in you. And I didn't go into it planning on doing a long distance relationship, but that's what ended up happening. So
yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. Okay, so that's good. And like even the fact that you DTR'd after 3 days. So like if you could kind of speak to that, like what to the guys that are looking to pursue a girl well, and like you said, of like they're spending intentional time with them and then they recognize themselves like liking them more, what would you say is like the best way to come to the girl and then also like recognize those feelings within to like, oh, like I actually want to pursue this girl?
Yeah, it's tricky. I think guys tend to lean towards the, hey, do you want to hang out, and try to make it feel casual, as if they can like casually.
It's probably self-preservation.
Absolutely. They're like protecting. They're trying to like slide into DMs, but in real life.
Yeah.
And it like doesn't work
good.
that way. At some point, you have to turn the corner and just come out there and say it, and it's gonna feel awkward. Like guaranteed. In hindsight, our conversation was cute, but in the moment, I'm terrified and I'm stumbling over words.
But it's so attractive.
Yeah, I guess I'll take her word for it. But yeah, just taking that leap of faith and saying, essentially, when you're at the point where you hung out a couple times, clarity is kindness was one of the things that we said.
That's actually funny because that was a part of the conversation, and later on that night he brought that up. Like we were talking about something else entirely, and I said, clarity is kind. And so later on that night he goes, "Hey, as you said, clarity is kind. So I just want to be clear. I like you, you know? And so that
Wow.
was, I mean, you were confident in it. And so that was really attractive to me.
Yeah, it helps. It
I
helps.
love that. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that's so good. Clarity is kindness. That is so good. And then you're like, you pay attention. He's a good listener
Mm-hmm.
and he's wanting to pursue me. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the engagement? Where did y'all have the engagement?
Mm-hmm.
And then I just love your pictures from the engagement. So talk about those a little bit because they're just so cute.
Oh, thank you. So it was, so we started dating September,
Mhm.
September of 21, and we got engaged officially March of 21. 22. March
Yeah,
of 22.
March 23rd.
Right?
March 23rd,
Wow.
2022, I think.
Didn't know we got married in 21.
Oh yeah, we started dating in 20.
Yeah.
Got engaged in
COVID
21.
year. That's right.
COVID
Yes,
ruined everything.
Yeah.
it
COVID,
does.
COVID just
Timelines are
took my
just out of
calendar and
there.
screwed it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, started dating September 2020, got engaged March of 21. Um, and I was under the impression that, so we were debating whether or not I was going to move to Salt Lake because we were dating distance, or he was going to move to Dallas. Ended up deciding that he was going to move to Dallas. And so that was planned for April.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Wow.
I was under the impression that the engagement was going to happen in April after he moved. And
Right.
so we were planning a trip to California, which is where I'm from.
Right.
It was my birthday weekend, and so we were gonna go there. He was gonna officially meet my parents, and then just hang out, and I was gonna show him where I was from. And so I knew that the conversation with Dad was gonna happen that weekend. I did not know that a proposal was gonna happen, so he
Yep.
kind of wrapped everything into one.
I was trying to squeeze meeting the parents, asking for her hand, and then actually asking her for her hand
Yeah,
all into one little weekend.
yeah,
But
Oh my
it
goodness.
helped that I had Trevor, her
yeah.
brother, because we were already
Yeah.
friends, and he I'd never been to Fresno before, but he
Mhm.
clearly knew Fresno well, and
Right.
obviously knew his family, and so he was invaluable. Like I couldn't have done it without him.
Yeah.
He said
So
my
anyway, so we
built-in
went to the
wingman.
beach.
Yeah,
Yeah, we went to the
exactly.
beach. It's called Montana de Oro. It's these gorgeous like oceanside cliffs, and we did it on the side of a cliff. And if I said no,
It's
he
so
was prepared to
cute.
jump off.
No, I was not.
I'm just kidding.
Oh my
I had like a parachute on.
You
I
push
just
me off if I
fly
say
fly off into the distance on a wingsuit.
oh my
that
goodness.
was
That's
great.
amazing.
I think
That's
the
amazing.
pictures are then are all courtesy of your mom, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Trevor.
Yeah,
Trevor's actually a good
I
photographer.
yeah,
love that. I
So
love that. Oh my gosh. The joy on y'all's faces and like Taylor, I could see it of just like what is happening? Like you were not ready. You were not like you had no suspicion at all. And it was just pure joy. You're like like
we were.
literally after like a hike, right? Wasn't it a hike or
Yeah,
something?
yeah.
pretty much, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A little
Oh
walk on the
my
cliffs.
Super casual, but very
It
us.
was like, turn around. Oh my gosh, that is so cute. I love it. Okay, so now we're going to get into the questions that everyone's dying to know.
Yeah.
And it's talking about just kind of what engagement should look like. So then, how do you picture Christ's love for the church, and how do you think that plays out in like everyday life and like friendships, singleness, dating, um, preparing for marriage, just all of that of like the way that Christ loves the church? Like, how should we love others in relationships in that way?
Yeah, I mean, there's the whole we love because we've been first loved by him, and so that pours out into all our relationships, whether it's friends, coworkers, everything. We can pour out love selflessly, not in this kind of like transactional way because we've already been poured into with so much
Right.
love from the Father. But then specifically in a relationship, once you get into marriage, but
Mhm.
as you're looking ahead to it, you get the role of like the Bible talks about, Paul talks about the man representing Christ and Christ's
Mm.
sacrificial love for the church, and the man being represented by Christ and the woman being represented by the church. And so just the man sacrificing, dying for the woman, and the woman loving and serving the husband, both being like self-sacrificial towards each other.
Mhm.
It's the gospel,
Yeah.
and every godly kingdom marriage should be an example of the gospel, the way Jesus loves and the way the church
That's
loves.
so good. That's
That
so
was what
good.
our the sermon during our wedding was actually about that. And it
Yeah.
was incredible.
Yes. Oh, I loved that sermon. It was so good. Their wedding also, guys, go look at their Instagram and I'll link their Instagrams in the bio. Their wedding was the most fun ever. Like, it's so
Aw.
cute. Also, like y'all are so smart because people are like hungry at weddings. When the wedding party went back, they had chips and guac and salsa for
Uh-huh.
like the outside. That was the
Yeah.
best thing. And then they had serve yourself tacos. And I was like,
Yes.
this is the best way to do a wedding.
I
It
love that
was
you love
so
it so
good.
much.
It was so good. I was like, "Okay, I'm taking notes, all the
Yep.
notes.
There you go.
Chips and salsa while we're waiting for dinner."
Oof.
It's needed. I
Mm.
love
I'll
it.
help you plan yours one day.
Oh, yes, please do. Please do. I'm gonna need all the help. I love it. Yeah, you'll be first. I'll be like, "Taylor." That's so good. Okay, so the second question is how do we think as Christians should view engagement in marriage? Like how do we view it? And like you said, we should view it in the lens of that it is the gospel. Um but in the way of like the light of the world, they view it as like, pretty pictures and like it's not full-time commitment. Like how do you think we should view engagement and like that period and that season and then how in preparation for marriage?
I mean, it definitely needs to be an intentional season.
Mm,
Like, you need to go into it not whimsically. I think we do have this idea culturally of relationships, marriage. It's very whimsical, it's very emotional.
mm,
It is that, but it's also incredibly practical.
mm,
Like, you're going into it's not a contract necessarily of I'm going to hold up my end if you hold up your end.
right.
So you need to be serious about knowing, hey, kind of regardless of what you do and how you perform, quote unquote, for me, like I'm in and I'm committed to you.
Mm,
So I think we need to hold those things in high honor because the Lord holds those in high honor.
that's so
All
good.
throughout Scripture, it talks about that. So engagement definitely intentional, and then marriage.
Yeah, I think there's the idea that you should date for marriage, and I
Mm,
think all the way through from the beginning of dating to being married. You have to be intentional about the purpose of dating and the purpose of engagement isn't just for the wedding day.
Yeah.
It's for
right.
like the next hopefully 40, 50 years with your partner
Mm,
where you're going to raise kids and you're
mm,
going to have to endure a mortgage and job changes
Mhm.
and
right.
like horrendous things that happen in life. And so when you're dating this person, how important it is to not just be like, I think she's wonderfully attractive,
Right.
but
Mm,
also I think she's going to be a great mother, a great partner
mm,
when I lose my job, a great
Mhm.
like, and go down the list and realizing you're choosing a partner for life,
Yeah.
mm,
especially in a Christian context where we're not planning on getting separated. There really isn't the option
Mhm.
to do that, and
Yeah.
so
right.
And I think the deeper layer too of you choosing a partner in like what you want your ministry to be together.
Mm, that's
Because I
good.
think, especially in today's society, it's hey, I'm lonely. I want a
Mm,
person to just like do fun things with,
yeah.
and that's an aspect of it for sure. It's very fun,
Mm-hmm.
but there's like a mission that we're on, and kind of
mm,
like a vision that we have for our lives, and
right.
those things. I think it's important to be aligned in order for that to flourish.
Yeah, that's so good. I was reading I think it was Single Dating Engaged Married by Ben Stewart. Oh, it's so good. And
He's
Great.
it talks
great.
he's literally amazing. I just love him. I'm like, I just want to get coffee with you.
Yeah.
But he talks about how there's this like person, this couple in Texas, and one's trying to go to California and one's trying to go to Florida. And like if they're walking, and he's like, I don't know why they'd be walking in Texas just trying to go there, but like besides the point. And he's like they're walking, if they try to go, like they're both gonna pull each other and like it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
And then he was talking about how his sister-in-law had like a heart for this certain place, and then his brother, I think it was his sister and his brother-in-law,
Mm.
and they were trying to do this thing and she wanted to do ministry in this certain area, and
Yeah.
then but she was like missing this aspect of it, and like he came in and filled that aspect. And so
Oh.
like I think that's another question of like, how have y'all seen in engagement and marriage, how have y'all seen each other like fulfill that ministry purpose in each of your lives?
Yeah, I think that's still something honestly that we're trying to work out
Mm-hmm.
as we move forward as a couple,
Mhm.
because T's really gifted at just like day to day ministering to people and being hospitable and speaking to people's lives in really intentional ways. And I come from a background of like small church plants where I'm doing a lot of stuff, leading groups and stuff like that. And so it's been something we've had to work through over the past couple of years of marriage, of like, how do we bring our giftings together and unify in the same direction with ministry? And it's not like one of us feels called to go to the nations and the other one is like, no, I'm called to Dallas. It's nothing crazy like that. But even in the midst of both of us feel like we're called to people in the same age group here in this city, it still is something that we're trying to figure out exactly how we cohesively work together as kind of a unit and reach out to our city and the people around us. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's got more in the context of groups specifically. It's tough to figure out, but it's been fun and it's a learning process. Do you have anything else?
No.
I think it is so good. And like, I mean, even from me personally, like I've gone in with like the dating mindset of like they have to have my exact same mission, and that's just that's not it. Like you grow in it together, like, and the Lord's gonna bring you together in unity, like you were saying. So that's so good.
I think so. I think callings, right? Like if you feel called to like teach in front of people or something, I think those things can be different. But if your visions are more or less aligned, then you'll figure it out. Like we both have a heart for people. We both have a heart for hospitality. We're just like, you figure out what that looks like in different seasons, but at least you're aligned on like what we want it ultimately to look like, big picture.
That's
and
good.
I think like everyone has calling from the Lord, but I think most people in my experience don't have this really specific direct calling. If you're to go to this country or you're to work at this company, most of us have a more like general idea of our giftings and how we could use those to serve the Lord. So a lot of times it's easy to get kind of caught up in the minutia of like, oh, do our callings align? And a lot of times like, hey, you know what? Discern, is she my calling? Is he your calling?
I love
in
God.
this season?
You love God. I'm committed.
Are
You're
we headed
committed.
in the same direction?
Right. That's
Generally.
good. That's good. I love that. That'll speak. Okay, so next question. How do you know if you are marriage material or even ready for marriage?
Ooh,
I know. It's a big question.
I have a couple of thoughts. I mean, I guess if we're going down like physically, mentally, emotionally, all of that stuff, physically make sure you're of age. Mostly I would say one thing that was helpful for us, we both kind of like had worked through our junk. I had come out of I'd just come out of a depressive season. I was going to counseling. And so I was able to like label things in myself. Or if I got upset about something, I was able to be like, okay, why am I upset, and trace it back. And he had gone through like a loneliness season, a really hard season at work. He had just moved, all of that. And so we both came out of really just like dealing with our stuff and figuring out more how we operate as people and our trigger points and things like that. So we were able to communicate it better. What else?
I mean, off of that, off of knowing yourself and being healthy individually, I think a big component is being right before the Lord and accepting what He's going to give you. Like, are you ready before the Lord to never be married and never find a spouse? Then you're really open to what He's actually speaking, as opposed to if you're straining after getting a spouse, finding a significant other. If that's your goal, and your goal isn't the Lord, and you're not finding joy, able to find joy in this season in singleness and use it for the Lord, then there's more risk of you jumping into the deep end and not being ready for yourself, and them not being ready for what you've gotten yourself into.
He was in Salt Lake for 5 years at that point by the time I had met him. And if you're a Christian, the dating pool is complicated.
Yes.
In Utah. And so I had asked him at one point, I was like, did you ever just go online and want to date online? He goes, no, I just, figured the Lord would bring her when He wanted to bring her. So it's just that like confidence, but also contentment for him. Specifically, he was like, hey, I'm just kind of living, doing my thing. And then if I see her, I'm going to go after her. I'm not just going to like wait around, but just the contentment. I think another thing too is being marriage material, understanding your own values, even in like cultural things. So politically, where do I align? Because if I meet somebody and our views and values don't really align, that's going to be hard. It's not to say that's impossible. It's just going to be more difficult. So even your philosophies on different kind of cultural things, even philosophies on how you think church should be done, could affect your relationship too. So I think understanding your values and really nailing those down is probably a smart thing to do.
Yeah, that's good. And we talk about like so much that you need to be content, and like that values are like so many things. Like you have to first know your values in Christ, and that's going to transform your other values in life. And so like whenever you saw Taylor, you're like, that's her, because you were running so full after God, and he's like, okay, look to your left, like that's her, you know. And it's like you don't, it shouldn't be this like you're searching, like you said, and you shouldn't have to have that conflict within like values of culturally, but like mainly spiritually, you know. And like you're saying, your views, so like if you it's just gonna be a whole lot harder to navigate. And like literally the whole point, I was talking to my mentees the other day, and I just love them, and they were like, I was like, y'all, even friendships, relationships, whatever it is, like you're supposed to encourage one another unto the Lord. And like if that is not the point of your relationship, then it's not God honoring. Like if you're not pursuing the Lord in your relationships, and that like you're supposed to encourage one another for the gospel, then that's not a relationship that's valuing God at the center. So that's so
That'll
good.
preach, girl.
Let's go.
I love it. Only the Lord. Only the Lord. I love it. Okay, so this is a hot take. We got some of these questions from Instagram asking on Rocker Clay. Yep, so just be ready. What do you think of the saying, when you know? Is that true?
Unfortunately, I do think it is true. At least in our case, it was.
Yeah.
And like when you're single, you hate that. You hate that because you're like, what does that even mean? Yeah.
I think in some cases it might not be,
Right.
depending on your personality. But if you've gone through the list of like self preparedness, and you know who you are, you know your values, and you know what you're looking for, then the list of questions you have to check off is way smaller.
Yeah, that's
You know,
true.
you like know what you're looking for. You know if you're having fun together. The list is short. You can know like, hey, this seems like a good fit, and proceed with confidence in the Lord. If you're someone who's a little bit more like cynical, questioning if that's just your personality type, which is totally fair, there's nothing wrong with being that kind of person, then that might not be your experience. But for us, and you're even a little more cynical than I am, but still, we kind of felt like we knew. You know?
So okay, I guess to like put a little bit more meat on the when you know, my experience, I think something that was helpful for me is in past relationships, if we had if there was tension or conflict or something, my mind would kind of immediately jump to, is this the thing that's going to break us up? Is this the thing that's going to tear us apart? And with Steven, if we had tension, I didn't think that way. I was very confident in like us. And so my question was then, okay, how are we going to overcome this? Or like, how are we going to figure it out? I know we're going to figure it out, but what's that going to look like? So I had confidence in that. And I think that's when I know, because it just felt differently in that regard.
Right. Y'all listen to that, because that's the thing, is that like you are going to, like you said, you're going to be dealing with mortgages. You're going to be dealing with like if you lose your job, like those are the things that you're going to have to be dealing with in marriage. And so like if you can't work that out in dating or even engagement, like that's not, you should not go into that, you know. And then if it's the other way of like, no, like I want to work it out with this person, like there's no other person I would want to work it out with, then that's so good. So I love that. Thank you for putting your hot take on that. That's so good. Okay, so then this was a topic I was actually talking with my accountability partner. We're talking about marriage is not promised to us. So Jesus is, and that's enough. So what would you say to the guy or girl that is worried about putting too much emphasis on marriage or engagement or wanting a spouse? And like you said, you're like, you don't want to just solely focus on striving after a spouse, but like if you have a proper heart's desire, what would you say to that person, of even if they are in engagement and they're putting too much pressure on the marriage or the engagement? What would you say to them to just kind of reorient their heart towards God, and that like marriage is not promised to us, you know?
Yeah, it's a great question.
It's a great question.
I think part of it depends on the person, right? Depends, but generally, I think willingness to see the exact moment you're in as what you're currently being called to by God, and that's a really good thing. We have a tendency. This is something I've been learning myself and trying to, with varying degrees of success, live in. But we don't actually live in the future and we don't actually live in the past. We truly live in the present, but how often are we living in either the future or the past, which we're not actually there.
Yeah.
You're actually in the present. That's the only place where you're going to be able to find joy. That's the only place where you're going to be able to find satisfaction is the present, your present circumstances that the Lord has given you. And so if you're looking to the future and putting all this pressure on the marriage in the future and everything, you're going to keep living your life in the future to the next thing.
And it'll let you down because you're putting so much emphasis on it.
Every time. Or if you're living the past of like, man, I'm married now, which will be the case for people. You'll have moments where it's like, I'm married now and I don't have the time I used to have. I don't have the freedoms I used to have. My wife is mad at me for this, or I let my wife down in this way. Like, in all the ways, there will be times where you think you won't, but you will look back and be like, man, singleness was awesome. And you can't let yourself live in the past either, because like that, the past doesn't exist anymore. You're not there, and you're not going to find joy there. And so I think just the recognition and the discipline of being present and living in what the Lord has given you now is something you have to learn no matter what stage of life you're in. And I think that's what Paul talks about as like the secret to what's the word? Contentment. Contentment.
Yeah, that's so good. Wow, I love that. And that, I mean, it's so true that there is no past and there's no future. Like, literally, God tells us in the Bible, do I care for the lilies of the field? Like, how much more do I care for you? And I have you in this moment for a reason. And so we have to be able, and like I was telling my friend the other day of like, his mercies are new every morning, but if we look to tomorrow's mercies, we're going to miss the ones that are today. Like, we're going to miss his mercies. And so, like you said, I think that is the key to contentment, is that like knowing that he has you right where he wants you and that he has good plans for us. I feel like so often we forget that he is a good father that wants good things for us, and he knows what's best. So he knows that during that time that you were in Salt Lake, you needed to be single, and he knew that going to Colorado to just visit that church was actually going to bring Stephen to you, he has a perfect plan. So I love that.
I had the realization from the Lord this week. That's why I'm bringing up. You mentioned me being in Salt Lake City. I wasn't thinking about past relationships. I was thinking about my time in Salt Lake City. But the Lord kind of spoke to me and made me realize a lot of times the reason why past relationships didn't work out was not necessarily because we weren't a good fit as the world would see it, but because specifically it wasn't what the Lord had for me in that moment. Like, he had more for me to learn in Salt Lake City, and if that college relationship had worked out, I probably never would have gone there. And so like, you miss out on things, like you said, you miss out on opportunities that the Lord has for you to learn or to get his good gifts when you wander and you don't live in the present.
That's so good. Oh, that's amazing. I love that. Love the little whispers from the Lord. They're so great. Thank you so much for logging on. Next week we will talk again with Taylor and Stephen about engagement and marriage for part 2, so make sure to come back. But for now, y'all have a blessed day and a great week.